Welcome to Behind the News. I am Halima Sadia. Today in Behind the News, we are talking about abolishing of Article 370 in Kashmir. As usual, I am joined in the studio with my experts, political experts, Dr. Sharda and Tahir Aslam Gora. I welcome you both.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting.
Let's start with this Act 370 in Kashmir. What is this article all about?
Basically, it just gave a special status to the Kashmir and Kashmiri people. This was done in 1953 by the proclamation of the president. There was no amendment in the constitution. At that time, what happened, let's assume, I'm just going to say in short, in 1947, end of 1947, when in the name of Kabilas, Pakistani army attacked India. At that time, there was no way for Hari Singh to fight with them. He was the king of that, and he at that time decided that he would not join either Pakistan or India. When this kind of trouble came, then he had no army, so he had to ask Indian government to come and help. When Indian forces went there, at that time there used to be prime ministers. There were no chief ministers in Jammu and Kashmir. The first chief minister became in 1965. But before that, whatever were the chief minister, Abdullah's father, he some or the other always thought that we should remain with India with a special status. Now that special status was simply that you will have your own identity, your own flag, and your own even national anthem. That means you will be totally different except in defense, foreign affairs and currency. Rest everything you are independent. Now what is happening from since then onwards till today, that most of the leaders who have ruled Jammu and Kashmir, they have totally siphoned the money given by in Arabs by the Indian government to the Kashmiris. But it never went to the real Kashmiris. It just went into the pockets of the three families. Three families, one Raja family, one Abdullah family, and one Mufti family. These were the families who have been ruling off and on Kashmir for the last so many years. In 70 years, the condition of any Kashmiri did not become better. And when in 1987 and 88, another big terrorist groups trained in Pakistan entered Kashmir, then another thousands of people got killed by those so-called, they say that we are the real Kashmiris who have come here to liberate Kashmir. But that was not the case. The case was very clear that they were being trained in Pakistani territory just to go infiltrate and fight and try to kill as many as Indians you can. So this is basically the best thing which has happened to the Kashmiris. Reason is very simple. Now the Kashmiris are Indians. There are certain rules and regulations, RTI, that was not implemented in Kashmir. Marriages at the age of 12 and 13, which is unconstitutional, they were being taking place in Kashmir. Now the 18 years rule will come. So there are so many other things which will come, and after implementation of those things, the lives of Kashmiris will become better. Industry would come, hospitals would come, and at the same time, economy will boom in the next 5 years.
So Tahir, I come to you. What do you think the importance of Article 370?
There was no importance of Article 370. In fact, it is now, I would say, history. It has been abrogated by BJP government, and that's a good sign for Kashmiris as well as for India, and I would say that's a good sign for peace in Southeast Asia. What Dr. Sharda said, I'd just like to add a couple more things. This article 370 used to segregate Kashmiris from the mainstream society. And now separatist parties are soft separatist parties, are sort of a Kashmiri, so-called Kashmiri nationalist parties. They say that no, this was very important for us. This article has significance for Kashmiris because this was giving us a special status. So what was that special status? The status was that the Kashmiri Muslims living in Srinagar with majority, they were enjoying sort of their isolation, quote unquote. I'm saying enjoying quote unquote. Actually, that special status was granted, was given to those families, as Dr. Sharda mentioned. They were enjoying actually everything, and the innocent Kashmiris, they were just betrayed by those families. And eventually, what we see then down the road, and the claims recently, Mehbooba Mufti said that this is a Muslim majority state in India. I can't get it. What does that mean? Is Islam a race? No, Islam is a faith. Bharati is a united factor based on Indian heritage. So if you are Muslim, you are a Hindu, you are Sikh, living in any part of India, that does not give you a special status. If you are Indian first and foremost, then you are special in India. So that was the kind of a debate in society. I mean, for instance, I like to put some few things in our context. For instance, in Canada. In Canada, Muslims are arriving, or Islam is arriving for the past, say, 80, 70 years. So after 200 years, we just segregate ourselves in a certain area and say, no, this is our riyasat, this is our special state. Things don't work that way. Based on religion, you cannot isolate one part of the land. Kashmir happened to be a land of Hindu Pandits for centuries, for at least for the past 5 to 10,000 years. If that is the case, that who owns Kashmir? Then Kashmir primarily owned by Hindu Pandits. But they never claimed that way. They said that this land is for everybody, whoever wants to live in peace. So, BJP government finally had the guts, finally come up with the guts to denounce this discriminatory article and abrogated it. And I really salute BJP government for doing this.
For the last 30 years, BJP government was trying under the leadership of Atal Bihari Vajpayee that 370 should be abrogated and it should be removed. But
and with the time, things evolve also. I think there are certain changes because we have to see the time context and the need of at that time and need now at this time. So we have to be honest about that.
No, basically, it's not I mean, you may be right, but the question is whether they had the majority at that time or not. Now, you see, they never had that kind of majority. Now, last time also they did not have the majority as far as Rajya Sabha is concerned. So they were just waiting for the time, and this time they got the majority, and there were certain other factors which played into it. They realized that all those Hurriyat leaders, their kids are studying and working in the best institutions in India, Pakistan, and different countries in the world. I mean, I have all the names. I mean, Gilani's children and other children, where they are, what they are doing. They are making millions and millions of like that. That was number one. The money was absolutely not used for the common man. Number one. Number two, which is very important, that Trump made a statement that I am going to mediate. That also another factor came. Then if they don't take the action now, which ultimately they had to, if they don't take now, then they will take after 5 months. Then in the meanwhile, Eid would come in another 1 or 2 weeks. Eid is coming. So there were so many factors which they just decided. But I salute the government only on one point, that the way they managed. I mean, no one could ever imagine and think that in 2 days, in one day, Rajya Sabha will be cleared with the 2/3 majority, and the next day in the parliament. This has never happened since the first parliament of 1952.
I'd like to jump in here about Trump, because Dr. Sharda brought a very interesting point. Trump met Imran Khan a couple of days ago in Washington. Actually, Imran Khan met Trump in Washington a couple of days ago.
Through courtesy Saudi Arabia.
Through the courtesy of Saudi Arabia, for sure. And Trump said that I'm willing to mediate if Prime Minister Narendra Modi agrees on. And now I realize, after abrogation of Article 370, that probably that's what Trump meant at the time. That's what he meant, that this is a kind of mediation. He indirectly did, you know.
So
and now actually might be in coming days, Trump jumps in kind of a mediation if tension goes high between India and Pakistan. But India didn't need anyone's mediation. And India proved it. And now practically, what happened after abrogation of Article 370, practically I would say now the LOC is actually international boundary.
So
because India has turned Jammu and Kashmir as union territory as well.
So we have talked about the reaction of or the stance United States is taking. Let's come to Canada.
No, United States. Only. Let's forget about the Trump at the point. Only yesterday, U.S. State Department spokeswoman, Morgan Ortagus, she said, we are closely following the events in Jammu and Kashmir. We take note of India's announcement revising the constitutional status of Jammu and Kashmir and India's plan to split the state into 2 territories, telling to the PTI news agency journalist. We call on all parties to maintain peace and stability along the line of control, which has now LOC, which is a new line now.
Right.
So that clear. And another very surprising thing, UAE. Now, UAE's ambassador, India, Ahmed Al Banna, he said the UAE, which has emerged as a key partner of India in the Gulf region, he said, we also took note of the introduction of Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Bill in the Indian Parliament, aimed at replacing Article 370 with the creation of Ladakh region and the state of Jammu and Kashmir as India 2 new territories, union territories. He viewed this latest, this is the line, Tahir Sahab, he viewed this latest decision related to the state of Jammu and Kashmir as an internal matter, just this word, UAE, internal matter as stipulated by the Indian Constitution.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine?
So this is how people are taking it. But if we see in Canadian scenario and we come to the NDP, they are opposing this this whole act. So how do you see what's going on in Canada? Why Canada is behaving like that?
No, it's not a question of Canada, it's a question of leader. You see, the leader of NDP party is a sympathetic towards Pakistan right from the beginning. And his attitude towards anti-Indian government that is there for the last, I would say, 20 years. So that attitude has made him to give this kind of a statement. And that's why NDP today is sitting at 14%. That's why he is not going to get more than 20 or 22 MPs. And that's why he has to resign after the election on October 31st, because his party is not going to get more than 20 or 22 seats. So these are, you can say, immature-ish comments by the leader of the party. NDP as such, if it was under Jack Layton, things would have been different. But now, since it is under a leader who does not think himself as a Canadian, but thinks himself as anti-Indian government, that won't help him in future, especially in the society. Yeah, there are certain sections. There are, of course, Sikhs vote, but even among Sikhs also, he does not command a majority. He just commands only maybe 10 to 20%. So there is a reason behind him. It is a personal, I think, kind of a fight.
So we have to be objective here than being personal or having any sympathies, because right now a world scenario is very delicately different than our prejudices.
And also I like to elaborate further about NDP statement. What does it say? We should read it now because it is important. NDP is one of Canadian political parties. So NDP Foreign Affairs Secretary Guy Caron issued the following statement, quote, "New Democrats are deeply concerned by reports of the Indian government's crackdown in recent days in Kashmir. The government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi recently took steps to revoke Section 370 of the Indian Constitution, which granted Kashmir considerable autonomy, and moved to arrest top Kashmiri political leaders, deploy thousands of troops, impose a shutdown of telephone and internet services, and restrict peaceful assembly. Like Amnesty International and other civil society groups, we are troubled by such actions which provide fertile ground for more human rights abuses in a region where the people of Kashmir regularly suffer abuses such as excessive force, arbitrary detention, and the lack of due process and communications blackout. The Liberal government must find the courage to firmly communicate these human rights concerns to Indian authorities. We must always have a foreign policy that is based on human rights and international law, not one that pays lip service to a rules-based international order without actually standing up for those rules." Unquote. Now, my commentary.
No, you give commentary, but I just want to ask why these people have not ever condemned Pakistan, who is killing thousands of people in the Northwest Territory, Balochistan, for the last 20 years.
No, then that's where I was coming up. It's not just only Pakistan. I'm talking about other countries. First of all, I haven't seen any statement so far by NDP party for Muslims persecution in China. I haven't seen NDP strong condemnation, even any sort of condemnation of Saudi Arabia, what Saudi Arabia is doing, human rights violation, as well as Saudi Arabia's assault on Yemen. They never issued any statement. NDP has never issued any statement and never condemned Pakistan government on Hindu girls' forced conversions to Islam and as well as forced marriages. They never condemned Pakistan Army's Pakistan Army's atrocities on Baloch, on Muhajir, on Sindhi, on Pashtun. So it means that NDP party is so selective and so narrow in their agenda. It looks like they are towing Pakistan's ISI agenda for surely and clearly, because they only speak about Khalistan and Kashmir, and they promote Khalistanis and they promote Islamists.
That's why the leader, you see, leader is always there to lead the party, and his views are being expressed in the statement. It may not be the NDP party, but when leader says something, then it is acceptable.
So let's come to Pakistan now. What is the expected reaction, or what kind of reaction so far we have observed from Pakistan?
Government has already taken the steps. They have decided, they formed one committee. They have decided to fight, basically just send their representatives to all the countries and try to convince the heads of the states that this step should be condemned. That's number one. Number two, they have closed the Wagah border. They have closed every border now with India. Number three, they are going to close by this time airspace by Indian and by other airlines, of course, going to India. And then at the same time, China, along with Pakistan, has also closed the visa for Mansarovar, which is a Makkah and Medina for Hindu pilgrimage who go there. So they have also closed. So these are the few actions you can say they have taken, and at the same time they have strengthened the border with Pakistan, with India, and sending more extra forces. Well, what it means, I don't think Pakistan can afford a war at this moment, and I don't think that will be appreciated by most of the countries, even their own friends. So I just hope this is just basically a show, because you see no politician can live and survive unless until they show no, we also exist. That's
So
my
let's
view.
come to the pressure of war and tension between India and Pakistan. So Tahir, I would ask you, what kind of reaction you're expecting from India in this scene then?
No, I mean, India has already done its action very carefully and wisely. Now is reaction coming more from Pakistan than from India. India would defend whatever comes from Pakistan, because we have witnessed from 1947 until now that Pakistan has initiated 4 wars against India over Kashmir issue and lost all those wars. Even at that time Pakistan was in better situation, better position. But today Pakistani economy is crumbling. Pakistan's image in the world is very troubling, and hardly there is anyone on this planet who supports Pakistan on this issue. But particularly, if China said few things, it's a kind of a lip service, because China herself is not happy with Pakistan over CPAC issue, because CPAC is now almost packed. So that's the kind of a scenario. What Pakistan has done, Prime Minister Imran Khan delivered a speech yesterday, and in that speech he talked about again that stupid 2-nation theory and all that kind of Islamist ideology which has no place. Pakistan phoned Malaysia and Turkey, and what would they say? They would say, okay, that's fine. Pakistan is already in communication with Gulf states, Saudi Arabia as well as United States, but they are not taking Pakistan's any plea seriously. In fact, United States' only interest is to get Pakistan's help in order to get their troops out of Afghanistan. That's all. America has no interest in Pakistan at the moment other than this thing. So I don't think so that Pakistan's reaction would be tremendous. They are not in position to show tremendous reaction, but Pakistan would do something. I understand and I justify Pakistan's position to defending herself. That's fine, but Pakistan would not be able to be offensive this time.
So Dr. Saab, how do you see the world scenario, the reaction of international community towards that? Because some of the people are comparing it with Palestine, the situation, what happened there. So how do you see that?
I haven't seen in the last 60 years the Palestinian issue being solved, and I don't see that being solved in my life. It's not going to be solved. 126 resolutions were passed by the United Nations against Israel. A small country never bothered about it. Keep passing. United Nations as such is a paper tiger organization which has no power to implement any decision. That's number one. Definitely China will help Pakistan to raise this issue in the coming United Nations. No, that I don't doubt at all. Definitely it will be raised there. What will be the reaction? What will happen? Pakistan is in itself a very big financial trouble. So they have to first of all look for that. Otherwise, people also, even a common man in Pakistan, in another 5-6 months, if the situation remains the same, the so-called inflation continues the way it is, and people won't be able to even have one-time meal. People will come on the road, they don't care then what Kashmir is and what not.
Then your life is more important than anything else. So if we come back to Kashmir, how do you see the future of Kashmir, especially when you talk about the economic prosperity and different things. Like, I like the way Tahir said that it's basically integrating Kashmiris to the mainstream Indian scenario. So how do you see the future?
Basically, it is very clear that no one will be able to buy agricultural land there. That's clear. But the rest of the laws will be implemented, and the industry land will be given to all those people who want to go and put industry there. You want to do business? Yes, you can go and buy a land and do the business. The maximum benefit out of it will be the Punjab. Punjab will gain maximum because they do the business already with the Jammu area of the Kashmir, and they are adventurous, and they would do another very fine business with them. I think it will take at least 5 years, according to me. Tahir Sahab may say less than that. No, I think it will take 5 years to stabilize the things, and lot of money investment going into Kashmir, which will help build hotels, which will help build tourism. Kashmir at one time was the best tourist state. People were making so much money. All film industry used to shoot there. But now, from 1988, no one is going there. So hopefully in the next 5 years, Kashmiri and Kashmir will progress as it was before the 1980s.
Tahir, your take on Kashmir's future?
No, I like to touch that part what you asked Dr. Sharda before about comparing Kashmir's situation with Palestine. I like to touch that part because I don't find any similarity between these two things. Islamists compare these kind of things. Islamists compare all Islamist problems around the globe like Palestine problem, and they want to present Kashmir issue as Palestinian issue. And for me personally, even Palestinian issue is more kind of an Islamist issue than any sort of a controversy between Israel and Palestinian. Israel would had solved the issue if there would not be jihad, if there would not be violent extremism. And Palestinians, there is one similarity between Palestinian issue and Kashmiri. The same way Palestinian top families are grabbing money in the name of jihad, the way Kashmiri separatists and soft separatists were grabbing money from both governments, India and Pakistan. So that's the only similarity. And yes, of course, in coming years, this decision by BJP government would have great impact on India, on Kashmiris, on even Pakistan. Pakistan does not realize at this moment there would be a long-lasting peace. Even Pakistani Islamists or militant or jihadi groups don't like it, but they cannot stop the flow of time.
A fighter, just one line, a fighter for Palestinians, Mr. Arafat, when he died, he left a property worth more than $1 billion. That's how the money went. I mean, he was a fighter. He should not have even $1 in there, but he left more than $1 billion. Thank you.
I thank you both for joining me today talking about Kashmir issue. We really value your very kind opinion.
Thank you very much.
Viewers, Kashmir and similarly world politics, never-ending issues. There are too many debates. We will be discussing continuously on Behind the News with me. So keep watching.